about getting vaccinated against RSV today. Learn more at bewareofrsv.com. This message is brought to you by Pfizer. Wendy's new breakfast 2 for $3 Biggie Bundles lets you choose from your fave 4, including a sausage or egg and cheese biscuit, small seasoned potatoes, or medium hot coffee. Limited time only during breakfast hours. U.S. price and participation may vary. Not valid in a combo. Single item at regular price.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. The Dodgers, baseball's hottest team, are back in action after getting 2 days off. They're in Cleveland today for the start of a 6-game road trip. The Dodgers are 17-2 in August and 29 games over 500. James Harden spoke to NBA investigators Monday about calling Philadelphia 76ers president Daryl Morey a liar. The league is trying to determine if the Sixers violated salary cap rules. Harden told the investigators he exercised his $35.6 million option with the Sixers in June only because Morey told him he would trade him if he agreed to the option. Morey announced last week he's not trading Harden, prompting the 10-time All-Star to put Morey on blast. Harden wants to be traded to the Clippers. Morey is asking for a starter, maybe 2, and multiple first-round picks. Stay tuned on this drama. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is dedicated to empowering our communities by providing progressive talk radio for our audience. We strive to be an intersectional voice for the voiceless. As a Black-owned and operated station, we are committed to highlighting diverse perspectives and creating safe spaces for meaningful dialogue. We believe that everyone has something unique to bring to these political, economic, social, and cultural conversations, and we don't shy away from the hard conversations about current events. We endeavor to be a beacon of hope and understanding, while boldly challenging listeners to think more deeply about difficult topics that impact us all. With this in mind, our mission statement at KBLA Talk 1580 is simple: to create an inclusive platform that promotes civil discourse through honest dialogue and encourages personal growth among our listeners, so they can become the active agents of change. Our vision is to establish ourselves as the premier radio network with relevant programming across the beloved community, connecting people through shared experiences and collective power for lasting impact beyond these challenging times.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis, Smiley. And I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get updates on X, formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavissmileyshow.com. That's thetavissmileyshow.com. or wherever you get your podcast and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, how elites ate the social justice movement. Here's the question: can genuine change ever emerge from the fervor of social movements, or are they destined to fizzle out in the face of established institutions and elite influence? Provocative question, should be a great conversation, particularly given that we're just days away now, just under a week away from the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. Think about that. Next Monday, the 28th of August, is the 28th, is the 60th anniversary, rather, of the March on Washington. We got a great show. I mean, an amazing show lined up for you next Monday, as you might imagine, to celebrate that historic anniversary. But a great conversation again today, an hour or two, about elites eating up social justice movements. In our third hour, speaking of great hours today, a conversation with Kenneth B. Morris Jr., who is the great-great-great-grandson of Frederick Douglass and the great-great-grandson of Booker T. Washington. Talk about a legacy. Good Lord. A lot to talk about in hour three with Kenneth B. Morris Jr. here on Tavis Smiley. But in this first hour today, let's talk politics with National Washington Post columnist Philip Bump, who I'm pleased to welcome back to this program. Philip, how are you today, sir?
I'm well. How are you?
If I complained, I'd be an ingrate, and I'm doing well. Glad to have you on. A lot of politics to talk about every day these days. We're in that season, but we are really in that season officially tomorrow, Wednesday night, the first of these presidential debates, at least the ones Republicans are having. Joe Biden is not doing any debates, but Republicans are going to have a number of these between now and then. Donald Trump has said he will not participate in tomorrow night's debate. There are 8 other candidates participating. Let me just start with a series of questions about that. One, what does it mean for those who are on the stage that Donald Trump will not be on the stage?
I think it's a disadvantage. I mean, it gives them the opportunity to get more speaking time, which is always good when you're in a debate. Well, almost always good, depending on how you fare. But, you know, it does mean that they don't have the opportunity to confront Donald Trump directly. And, you know, one of the things that a lot of them have been fumbling with is they can't figure out how to actually take on Donald Trump in a way that doesn't alienate his base. Being able to talk to him directly probably would have given him a chance to do that, but Donald Trump sidestepped it entirely.
How do you take Donald Trump on? This is a question we'll talk about perhaps later in this hour, Philip, because I've had my own issues with this, about the way our profession, the way the media is trying to figure out how to cover Donald Trump this time around. We'll talk about that. There's a whole lot to unpack, as you can imagine, in that regard, about how we cover him. But for those on the stage tomorrow night, those 8 Republicans, how do you take him on? What advice, if you were asked to give advice, you're not doing that, but you are a columnist, so you have these kinds of thoughts and ideas. If you were going to take Donald Trump on in absentia, how do you do that effectively? Because Chris Christie and others are trying to figure that out tomorrow night.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a good way to do it, right? I mean, like, that sounds like a cop-out, but you know, we've seen 2 strategies that have been deployed. We've seen the Ron DeSantis strategy, which is to generally agree with Donald Trump's politics and agree with his efforts to, you know, cast the Justice Department as biased and so on and so forth. That hasn't worked, right? You know, he remains in second place behind Donald Trump. He's a lot of Trump supporters' second choice. So if Donald Trump dropped dead tomorrow, Ron DeSantis would be well positioned. But you know, as long as Donald Trump stays healthy, it's not doing him any good. But then we see someone like Chris Christie. And Chris Christie's going out and saying Donald Trump's a con man. Donald Trump is, you know, lying to you. He deserves to have these indictments, yada, yada, yada. And he's gaining no traction in the polls. He's doing okay in New Hampshire, where that sort of independent message can work. But beyond that, he's in the single digits in national polling. So it may simply be that there isn't a way to do it. There isn't a way to both criticize Donald Trump, expose him. You know, there have been these efforts to say, you know, with Donald Trump, we're going to keep losing and losing and losing. Republicans just don't believe it. You know, there may be evidence in 2018 and 2020 and 2022 that that's the case. Republicans just don't believe it. And if they don't believe it, you're not going to be able to convince them of it. And there just doesn't seem to be that path that these candidates can walk.
When we come forward, there's a lot to talk about in this hour with Philip Bump, National Washington Post columnist. I want to come straight away to this question, and that is what Donald Trump will be doing tomorrow night. What we know is that Donald Trump, in a pre-taped conversation with Tucker Carlson, who is now posting stuff on X, and that raises a whole other set of questions we could get into about this relationship with Donald Trump and Elon Musk. But tomorrow night, while the debate is going on, we are told that Donald Trump will be seen in a pre-taped interview with Tucker Carlson. So they're going to upend what's happening on Fox News. You see all these dots connect, right? Fox News fired Tucker. Tucker is over here now. He's got an exclusive interview with Donald Trump that he's going to run during the middle of the Fox News interview. Oh, this is juicy. That's happening tomorrow night on the Donald Trump front. But there's also a lot to unpack about what Democrats expect from tomorrow night, what they hope to get from tomorrow night. I assume that they're hoping that you're going to see these Republicans take a whole lot of unpopular positions tomorrow night in this debate. And what that will mean for their fortunes, President Biden is now dropping about $25 million on campaign ads. So he's starting already running campaign ads. Again, a lot to get to in this hour. When we come forward on Tavis Smiley with Philip Bump.
Seeking the truth. Speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
What does access mean?
Access means owning a home.
Access means growing my business.
Access means building generational wealth.
No matter your goals, U.S. Bank Access Commitment Programs and initiatives provide the tools and resources to help you reach them. Access your financial goals at usbank.com/access. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Hey, life doesn't stop when cancer starts. After diagnosis, treatment is vital. But for some, just getting there, to appointments, chemo, or radiation, is a major challenge. You can change that. Volunteer to give rides with the American Cancer Society Road to Recovery program. Driving for a few hours of your day can make a life-saving difference for someone with cancer. Visit cancer.org/drive to learn more.
To my hometown, my community. Some of you have known me my whole life. Do you notice anything different about the kids in the neighborhood? Ever paid attention? We might start with gifts, money, attention. These are signs. Child trafficking is happening right here in this town. So don't just watch through the window. Pay attention. Because the more we know, the more we'll all know to say no. Learn the signs to look for and how to help at no-to-say-no.com.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look. And unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So, let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California, once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at a gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event. Or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
Carson, get back!
Hey, I am Jasmine Carson, LSU Women's Basketball National Champion. I had to up my game, and this time I upped my intimate grooming routine too. Venus for Pubic Hair and Skin is the only razor and regimen specifically designed for your pubic area. Featuring a razor with a patented irritation defense bar and a skincare regimen that is dermatologist tested, Venus helps protect your pubic skin from shave irritation. Visit GilletteVenus.com to learn more about the full regimen of products.
Made fresh daily in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
All right, Philip Bump, we all know that Donald Trump will not be on the stage tomorrow night in the first of many Republican debates. But he will be featured in a pre-taped conversation with Tucker Carlson, we were told, on X. How do you read that? What do you make of that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the whole overlap between Donald Trump and Fox News and the tension between them over the course of the past few weeks has been fascinating. Fox News executives went to his club in New Jersey to sit down with him, try and get him to do the debate because they want, obviously people tuning in to watch, including his supporters. And he's, poking them in the eye by going to Tucker Carlson. I mean, Tucker Carlson is going to give a fawning interview, undoubtedly. He has proven time and again that he is not interested in, pressing his allies on their claims. And so it'll be an opportunity for both of them to sort of stick it to Fox News. I suspect it probably won't actually get that much attention. It depends on what Donald Trump says, obviously. But I think that probably more people will tune into the debate itself than this sort of sideshow.
Wow, you believe that? I when you come on the program, I usually am in lockstep with you in the way you sort of see things, but you missed me on that one. So you really don't think that this conversation tomorrow night with Donald Trump is going to get that much attention, that much traction?
I mean, it's going to get some, but I think that when you talk about viewership of a debate on Fox News with Fox News' audience, and I think there's going to be a lot of Trump supporters who tune into it. These Tucker Carlson Twitter things, they get a lot of views in the sense that, people scroll past them on the timeline, but the numbers really aren't that robust. There's really not that many people who sit down and watch these things. Who wants to sit and stare at their phone for an hour? It's just not how it tends to play out. So, yeah, I think that the debate will probably attract more attention just in terms of actual viewership than this Trump Carlson conversation.
So this is a nice segue into the way the media covers Donald Trump. So anywhere you look at this Donald Trump Tucker Carlson thing tomorrow night is a sideshow, and I'm being kind, calling it a sideshow, not a circus. It's a sideshow. No matter what one thinks of the Republican candidates, how good or bad they are, tomorrow night is a legitimate, sanctioned presidential debate to decide who the nominee of the GOP will be. Donald Trump's thing, once again, with Tucker Carlson is a sideshow, and yet I can assure you that our profession, certainly the TV media, will be falling over themselves tomorrow night to put as much coverage of the Donald Trump conversation as they will have of this legitimate GOP presidential debate. I'll take it a step farther than that. I would venture to guess that when all is said and done, and somebody like, Fair, looking at how the media handles these political issues, somebody's going to do some research on this. And I'm going to jump out front right now, Philip Bump, and guess that when all is said and done, the media will have given Donald Trump more coverage from that Tucker debate. So you're right. Many people, they may not watch it for an hour staring at their phones, to use your phrase, but I'm going to guess that when all is said and done, Donald Trump will get as much coverage by the national TV networks as will a legitimate presidential Republican debate. That's my guess. You want to take that bet?
Well, it's sort of hard to measure, so I'd be happy to take the bet because I don't know we'd be able to resolve it quite honestly. But look, Donald Trump is almost certainly going to win the nomination, right? To the extent that we have Doug Burgum and Mike Pence and Asa Hutchinson arguing about stuff, there's a reason that should get less attention, which is that none of those people is going to be the Republican nominee for president.
Right.
It's also the case that Donald Trump has often sort of wandered into these tar pits where, he gets into the conversation with someone he considers a friend. He ends up saying something that's way over the line because, he's not reserved. And so it also may be the case that Donald Trump ends up saying something totally wild that deserves attention and deserves, a level of scrutiny that we wouldn't necessarily apply to the debate. I mean, consider that yesterday there was this news that broke about how Donald Trump wants to really crack down on immigration in a way that, even surpasses what he did when he was president. That's right in Tucker Carlson's wheelhouse. This is the guy who is advocating great replacement theory. Of course he's going to try and elevate Donald Trump's most strident right-wing claims about immigration. And that's newsworthy because the guy's probably going to be the Republican nominee.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that watching the debate, more people will watch the debate, but I think it's probably the case that there probably will be more news coming out of the Trump Carlson.
Oh, now we're back. Now we're back in sync again, Philip Bump. I figured we'd get there. Here's my point. I'm only raising this issue. Donald Trump is smart enough to know that if he wants to get more coverage than the Republican debate, he's got to say something outrageous. And so I can assure you that in this Tucker conversation tomorrow night, he's going to say something outrageous that the media will feel obliged to cover. And when all is said and done, his not being there is not in any way going to impact or slow down the media coverage he's going to get. He may even get more as a result. Again, this is the way that the media has been covering him for these last 6 or 7 years, which leads me to ask a just very specific question and get your read on this as a national columnist for the Washington Post. The audience has heard my take on this, I suspect, more than once. I have been very, very, very disappointed, disenchanted. I could add other words to that list with the way the media writ large, the mainstream media, has gone about covering Donald Trump from the first time he announced he was going to run for office, all those years ago now. That said, what's your read on the way the media has covered Donald Trump? And have we learned anything from these past, 6 years about how to better cover him, whatever better means, this time around?
Mm-hmm. I think we've definitely learned things. Even the Washington Post itself has adjusted the way in which we treat Donald Trump to accommodate the fact that he's so often dishonest, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that fundamentally one of the issues that Donald Trump interacts with the media in a way that is completely independent with wanting to present accurate information. He just wants attention. I mean, to your point about how he's going to, he may say something outrageous to Tucker Carlson to try and get attention. Consider that on Thursday, he's going down to Fulton County in Georgia in order to be arraigned, right? He's doing that on Thursday because it comes right after the debates. He wants to step on the debate media attention, even if it's him being arrested, right? He'd rather have that attention on himself than have it be on the debate. This is the way he's always approached it. And this is abnormal, right, for a lot of reasons. It's abnormal for a person in general, certainly for a presidential candidate. And I'm not sure there is a way or there is a clean line to be drawn between the Donald Trump who does these things for attention and presenting to the American public information about what Donald Trump is doing in a way that doesn't reinforce those tendencies. I will say this. He is deeply unpopular, beyond Republicans and, Trump supporters in general. A lot of Americans view him very skeptically. And I think that skepticism is a function of media coverage, which is accurate and, draws attention to the things he does and says that people don't agree with. And so I don't think it's the case. I think it certainly was in 2015, 2016, the media absolutely gave him space in a way that was helpful to him and unhelpful to, informing people. But I think we sort of changed it, and I think that's reflected to some extent in the fact that, overall people look at him and are like, this guy is doing things that I don't agree with.
To your point about the fact that people view Donald Trump with skepticism, there's a new article out this morning on Rachel Maddow's blog, written by a guy named Steve Bannon, and the headline is simply the following. Poll: Trump voters trust him more than family members, faith leaders. Trump voters trust him more than family members and faith leaders. So who are you talking about in that skepticism circle you referenced a moment ago?
Yeah, I'm talking about not Trump supporters. Right? And when I made those comments, I carved them out.
Yeah,
this is those findings, which come from a CBS News poll conducted by YouGov, are really striking. It's not. I don't think anyone's surprised by it, but they're striking. That 7 in 10 Republicans say that they view Donald Trump as a trustworthy source of information. And I think, and I wrote about this yesterday, I think this goes back to the way in which he appeared on the scene in 2015, right? So what happens? He announces in June 2015 and immediately starts saying garbage that he picked up on Fox News and Breitbart News about immigrants being criminals and all these things that are just flatly untrue. And you don't hear, it was understood that those appealed to the right-wing base, that Republicans are tuning into Breitbart and Fox News and eating that stuff up. But establishment people like Jeb Bush, they're not going to go out and say that stuff because they know it's not true and they think it's going to hurt them with, non-white voters, with Hispanic voters and things like that. So Donald Trump comes out and he says these things, these untrue things that are popular in the right-wing conservative media. And then everyone's like, yeah, this guy's telling the truth. And so it was because he was amplifying the lies that they were already consuming that they started to see him as a truth teller. And then that held. And they viewed every time he'd get into these debates or he'd say something false that was popular, they'd be like, yeah, this is the only guy who's keeping it real and saying what's true, even though it wasn't. And now we get to this point where 7 in 10 Trump supporters trust him as someone who tells the truth, more so than they trust family and friends, religious leaders, or other officials.
Yeah, more than their family members, more than their friends, more than their faith leaders. Let me connect that dot then to this dot. You raised his turning himself in Fulton County, the Fani Willis indictment. He turns himself in on Thursday, the day after the debate. Again, all this is choreographed. It's all sequenced, as you made quite clear. And so tomorrow night he's in this Tucker Carlson interview pre-tape that will go up against the Fox News debate featuring these 8 Republican candidates. He's going to steal attention from that. And then on Thursday, he turns himself in Atlanta. There are a couple things I want to talk about regarding that. The first thing is, though, how you think he plays the spectacle that is going to be made of his turning himself in Atlanta. We all know the way that he and everybody else who's been indicted has expressed such disdain and disregard for Fani Willis, who happens to be a black woman. Let's not lose sight of that. So here he is turning himself in on Thursday. He's going to use that to his advantage. The question is, in what ways?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does physically, right? So we had the first 2 indictments, the one in New York City and the one in Miami, both of which occurred near places where he had properties. So he could fly in and he had time on the ground there in a way that he didn't really in D.C. It was sort of hostile terrain. right? So in New York, he goes to Trump Tower, and he does this big spectacle, and it's the first one, and he does all these various things. And in Miami, he goes out to the restaurant afterward, the Cuban restaurant, is like shaking hands and making it in the campaign stop. We didn't see that in D.C. in part because he knew he'd encounter protesters and so on and so forth. And I think he probably won't do a lot of that tomorrow, in part because he understands that this is old news. It's his fourth indictment by now, right? And, and second, because he doesn't want to, Atlanta's not a place where a lot of people are going to be standing on the side of the road clapping at him, right?
Yeah.
That said, absolutely on social media, he's going to keep going back to this idea that he's a target of reverse racism, that Fannie Wells is out to get him because he's a white guy, because this plays into the white grievance that undergirds everything about his politics, right? This is why he's been successful from the start, playing the white grievance. So absolutely on social media, that's, I think, going to be the tack that he takes.
Yeah,
and continues to take, because he has already.
Yeah, and that's why I underscored the point about her being a black woman. You can rest assured that race is about to be a central figure, and it hasn't been. And interestingly, he didn't play the race card, as it were, with Alvin Bragg in New York, the way he absolutely is going to play it with Fannie Willis in Fulton County. So just get ready for that. We'll be talking about it, I'm sure, in the coming days. But race is about to raise its ugly head. That specter of race is going to be front and center once again after Thursday, once he turns himself in. That said, one final thing about Fulton County, and this just struck me, and I'm sure I'm not the only person. I've been black my whole life, and I have seen more African Americans and others who get in trouble with the law, whose bail is significantly above $200,000. When I saw that number, I'm thinking of all that Donald Trump is accused of, trying to overturn an election, trying to overthrow the country, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of these counts he's facing, 18 other people, it seems, pulled into this mess with him. This is a mess, like nothing we've ever seen in this country. And his bail is $200,000?
Yeah.
That number. Yeah, not like I say either. I'm not even sure what I expected you to say. I just wanted to put a finer point on that, because the number more than anything else, the number just jumped out at me. For all that he's up against, his bail is $200,000, and you know how bail works, right? You only pay a percentage of that, right? So for $20 grand, he gets to go home. Again, I don't know what to say about it, Philip. I'm stumping myself here, but it just jumped out at me. I guess the only question I could ask is, did that number say or do anything to you when you saw it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when you have a former president who's trying to subvert the results of an election, you would expect to see some sort of measure of the severity of that. I will say that, obviously it's more than the other people who were charged there, which, for what that's worth, which isn't a whole lot, but also it carried with it. One of the terms that was included in there is there were sanctions on him speaking out about the case, which are sort of interesting, right? And we've seen some hints at that in some of these other cases, but there really is this idea that he needs to be curtailed, and the things he's saying about the case and about the prosecution, so on and so forth, really are things that need to be have an eye kept on them. The other people, his co-defendants, didn't face that same sort of potential for sanction, and so that itself, I think, is probably more of a constraint. Even if you put his bail at $2 billion, right? He's still. Well, maybe $2 billion is a little high, but he's got a lot of money. He's not as rich as he said. He's got a lot of money, so the bail is never going to be a problem. It's those constraints. That's what's going to be interesting to see if that he can actually adhere to.
Yeah, and we'll see if he honors those constraints. And if he doesn't honor those constraints, we will see then what happens to him or not. If he just runs right through, crashes through all the constraints they're trying to put on him. All right, that's the Republicans. When we come forward, Philip Bump, National Washington Post columnist, the other side, a lot of news about Democrats, including the president, we want to talk about, on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on!
MC Light for AARP. Hip-hop, the cultural phenomenon that took New York by storm in 1973, is celebrating 50 years of rocking mics and crowds. Whether you're a ride-or-die hip-hop head or simply curious about its origins, check out the latest issue of AARP, the magazine. It celebrates this incredible milestone with a featured story brimming with fun hip-hop facts and history. Head over to aarp.org/Black Community to learn more.
Community is more than where you live. It's the people in it who go above and beyond to help it thrive. During the 50th anniversary of hip-hop and the 75th anniversary of Black radio, AARP recognizes the members, volunteers, people, and partners giving back to our communities. We believe when our efforts drive change for the greater good, we all thrive together. To learn more about how AARP supports efforts to keep our communities thriving, visit aarp.org/Black Community.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Former President Trump says he'll travel to Atlanta Thursday to surrender in his Georgia election interference case. He noted on Truth Social that he'll be arrested by Fani Willis, who he referred to as a radical left district attorney. The African-American Fulton County DA who launched the investigation into Trump and his allies has given the defendants until noon Friday to turn themselves in. South Texas is bracing for the arrival of a tropical storm. Harold is expected to make a landfall just south of Corpus Christi around midday, that's Central Time, causing coastal flooding, dangerous rip currents, and high surf as it approaches the coast. Some areas are likely to see anywhere from 3 to 7 inches of rain. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Seen another top in Pasadena, this time on our 134 West, 134 just before San Rafael. The carpool lane blocked for the crash. We're busy coming away from the 210. The 210 east at Rosemead Boulevard. That's a stalled vehicle stuck in the carpool lane there. Industry, it's going to be a top on the 60 West. Right as you get towards Azusa Avenue, a collision in the left lane. Baldwin Park, it's a wreck towards the off-ramp on the 605 south at Ramona Boulevard. That off-ramp partially blocked. And somebody stalled out in Santa Fe Springs on the 605 north at Slauson. Looks like they're sitting on the right shoulder, stay to the left.
Warning, if you are 60 or older, RSV can be a dangerous respiratory virus. Not all dangers come with warning labels. Talk to your pharmacist or doctor about getting vaccinated against RSV today. Learn more at bewareofrsv.com. This message is brought to you by Pfizer.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. At Blindster, we offer over 50 different custom window treatments, including faux wood blinds and shutters, all at prices less than retail. Plus, we'll send you free samples before you buy. Don't hire an expensive pro. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
Is this the This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. The Dodgers, baseball's hottest team, are back in action after getting 2 days off. They're in Cleveland today for the start of a 6-game road trip. The Dodgers are 17-2 in August and 29 games over 500. James Harden spoke to NBA investigators Monday about calling Philadelphia 76ers president Daryl Morey a liar. The league is trying to determine if the Sixers violated salary cap rules. Harden told the investigators he exercised his $35.6 million option with the Sixers in June only because Morey told him he would trade him if he agreed to the option. Morey announced last week he's not trading Harden, prompting the 10-time All-Star to put Morey on blast. Harden wants to be traded to the Clippers. Morey is asking for a starter, maybe 2, and multiple first-round picks. Stay tuned on this drama. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dominique DePrima from the show First Things First, weekday mornings from 6 to 9. Join us tomorrow with Powerhouse Entertainment attorney Nyanza Shaw, plus headlines, trending topics, and your phone calls. It's a Wealth Building Wednesday, only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you looking to steer your career in a new direction? Driving for the Culver City Bus can be your ticket to a long-lasting career with excellent benefits and paid training. Culver City Bus is looking for customer service and safety-minded bus operators to join the growing team. Culver City Bus offers on-the-job paid training, uniform allowance, and health benefits. Culver City Bus are now even putting their money in your pocket with a one-time $2,500 sign-on bonus. Let us connect you with an essential service job. If you enjoy driving, seek real opportunities for career advancement, and passionate about making a difference in your community, then we invite you to join the team. Start your journey by submitting an application at culvercity.org/job. For more information, visit culvercitybus.com or call the live customer service operator at 310-253-6500. Again, 350-253-6500.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and National Washington Post columnist Philip Bump. And delighted to have you tuned in to our program in this hour. We talked a lot about the GOP debate, the first debate tomorrow night. 8 candidates. Donald Trump will not be there, in case you just tuned in, bringing you up to speed here. We've been talking about that. So the official debate season kicks off tomorrow night once again. With these 8 Republicans on stage. Donald Trump will be talking to Tucker Carlson in a pre-taped interview, we are told, that will broadcast around the same time. So he wants to kind of steal the thunder from those who are on stage tomorrow night. The question now, Philip, is what Democrats are hoping and expecting from tomorrow night. Once again, the presumptive Republican nominee, Donald Trump, will not be on stage, but I assume that the Democrats are hoping that what we're going to see tomorrow night are a bunch of Republicans taking some very, very unpopular positions right about now, particularly in light of some of these recent Supreme Court decisions. What's the best that Democrats can hope for tomorrow night?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, this is one of those opportunities in which the parties, in this case, the Republican Party, is going to be competing with itself to move to the edge, right? You know, we saw this in the 2020 Democratic debates. The Democrats were arguing with each other about who would be more progressive and so on and so forth. You know, a lot of those debates ended up not meaning a whole lot since the Democrats didn't have the power to affect change. But I think one of the things the Democrats are hoping for is that the Republicans will really articulate sort of a shared consensus about policy and about priorities, which will then they'll be able to then use to say, hey, look, the Republicans are, stridently anti-abortion, or they want to, cut back on Medicare and Social Security, or any of these other arguments that they can then use. Because, essentially tomorrow night is the party establishing what the party stands for, which the Democrats hope they can then position negatively.
So speaking of Democrats, so the president obviously is playing chess as well, trying to make sure he makes the right moves right about now. And so he has a new ad that they're spending about $25 million on, a new ad that is focusing on his stewardship of the economy. That ad's going to run for about 16 weeks in battleground states, including Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. The campaign is also placing ads in Hispanic and African American media in those states. This represents, we were told, the largest and earliest buy by a re-election campaign ever. Certainly in Black and Hispanic media. That gives you some sense of the concerns that the Biden administration has about shoring up its base within Black and brown communities. That's the data. How do you read it, Philip Bump?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, I think that this is an unusual step for a campaign to be taking. I think it's in keeping with what the Biden administration has tried to do for some time, which is really turn attention to the fact that the economy is not doing badly, and certainly not doing as badly as some people had feared. There's this sort of general narrative and a sense out there of pessimism about the national scene. If you look at polling, it's fascinating. There's this big divide between how people feel about how they themselves are doing and how they think the country's doing. People feel like they themselves are generally doing okay. The country's not doing well. And I think what Biden's trying to do is get out there and say, hey, actually the country is doing well, and it's because of these policies that I enacted. And I think he's partly trying to do this now because he can, A, get attention for it, simply by virtue of doing it. But second, because he knows that next year he's likely to be running against Donald Trump, and the idea that a Biden-Trump contest will come down to a lot of nuanced policy debates is probably not going to bear fruit.
Mm-hmm. And how do you read the fact specifically that he is launching this early, again, trying to speak to Hispanic and African American voters?
Yeah, I mean, I think this, too, is not particularly surprising given what polling has shown. One of the things the Democrats are concerned about is that there is an opportunity that's created among non-white voters, among Black and Hispanic and Asian voters, for Republicans to sort of move in, that those groups have been so fervently, so supportive of Democratic candidates for so long, and that Republicans see an opportunity there. There's a very slight shift among those groups between 2016 and 2020 in favor of Donald Trump. It's not clear that has continued substantially. Hispanics have moved a little bit more to the right in 2022, for example, according to research. But the Biden campaign recognizes that they need to keep turnout and hopefully margins up among Black and Hispanic voters in order for him to be successful. And so they're moving early to try and make sure they're doing that.
We were talking earlier, Phil, about I was just trying to dig it back out again. So much paper on this desk in front of me with all this breaking news today. We were just talking earlier about this new CBS poll that found that Trump voters trust him more than family members and faith leaders. They see him as a more reliable source for the truth than their friends, their relatives, and their clergy. You'll take my point here. You would never see a poll like that about Joe Biden. that Biden supporters trust him more than they trust their friends, their relatives, and their faith leaders. You see where I'm going with this. If Donald Trump is creating this kind of outrageous polling about how they feel about him, then one could take that to mean that they are excited about his candidacy, and the turnout, turnout always matters. My sense is, and this election more than any other, turnout is really going to make the difference. We ain't even talked about third-party candidates yet, but the turnout is going to be critical in this election. And if Trump's followers are sycophantish at that level, and we know that Biden's support, according to the polling, is a little soft, well, that's not the best frame, if you follow my point.
Sure. No, you're right. And this is, part of what we're just discussing is that the Biden campaign wants to get people to feel more enthusiastic about him. I think that one of the things the Biden campaign is sort of banking on, and there was this report recently that Barack Obama specifically intervened to say, hey, man, you can't count on this. But in 2020, the reason that Joe Biden won wasn't Joe Biden, it was Donald Trump. Republicans came out to vote for Donald Trump, and Democrats came out to vote against Donald Trump. Biden absolutely is hoping, to your point, that Democrats will do the same thing in 2024. They'll come out to vote against Donald Trump, assuming that's who the nominee is. But he has to deal with this idea that back in 2020, Biden was a sort of unknown quantity. He was seen as optimistic. He was seen as, being able to not be Donald Trump and be successful. And you can never live up to the ideals of the electorate entirely. But Joe Biden, a lot of Democrats are kind of like about Joe Biden, doesn't think he's done that great a job. He needs to get them re-engaged. He needs to get them re-excited about it. And I think that's part of the reason why he's going up early, too.
Yep. A moment ago, you said that you kind of slid this in there, assuming that he's the nominee. You're talking about Donald Trump, assuming that he's the nominee. Nobody even utters that phrase these days. Everybody believes that he is the presumptive Republican nominee. I'm not sure you feel differently. I only come back to that point, your phraseology, assuming that he's the nominee, to ask this question, and that is, at this point, four indictments in, can you see anything that would preclude him from being the nominee?
Yeah, sure, he could drop dead, right? I mean, he's an old person. I don't mean to be flippant about it, but like this could happen.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear the indictments aren't going to have an effect.
Yeah.
There was polling that was done in Iowa by this really, really very good polling company. They went into the field. They're asking people about their views of the Iowa caucus. Donald Trump's doing better than DeSantis. Then the indictment drops in Georgia, and the next day they go back into the field, and Trump's lead has grown. Right, 2/3 of people in Iowa don't think he's committed any serious crime. These things are not having an effect. It's very unlikely that they're going to have an effect before voting starts next year, in part because the trials aren't going to start by then. I don't think that's going to do it. I don't think there's anything that's going to come up. People are so invested in him. They're so invested in 7 in 10 of them trust him to provide them accurate information of his supporters, right? Like, what's going to shake them of that? Nothing. Yes, there could be something else that happens, some, Deus Ex Machina, as they say, that affects Donald Trump so he can't actually run next year. Other than that, though, I don't know what the path is for him not to be the nominee.
Yeah. When we come forward, there are a number of interesting things, very interesting things that Philip Bump has been writing about of late as a national Washington Post columnist. I want to probe some of that when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I learned about atrial fibrillation the hard way. My symptoms would come and go. Shortness of breath, fatigue. I kept going. Then I got so lightheaded, I couldn't. My doctor said I have AFib, so I'm about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. Other symptoms, irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain can come and go, but the risk of stroke stays. If you have symptoms, tell a doctor. Visit notimetowait.com.
Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Parents, we know we can't protect our kids from everything. Eventually, they're going to bump their heads or scrape their knees. But we can protect them from 6 types of cancer. HPV, or human papillomavirus, is a common preventable virus that can cause cancer later in life. The HPV vaccine prevents human papillomavirus and all the cancers it can cause. The American Cancer Society recommends getting your sons and daughters the HPV vaccine starting at age 9 to protect them later in life.
She's so smooth, I'm interrupting my own shower to remind you to treat your skin like the queen she is with Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash, packed with Olay's highest level of vitamin B3 complex. It's so moisturizing that it will give you visibly smoother, head-turning skin in just 14 days. People wondering, how'd she get so smooth? Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash. Also, try Olay Hyaluronic Body Lotion.
My ride smells just right, just right, just right, just right.
Y'all gotta try that Febreze car.
Just right, just right, just right. Yeah. La 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 la. With up to 40 days of consistency, all over Febreze car clips right on your vent. You know my car's my happy place. Keep that smile on my face when it smells just right, just right, just right. Yeah. Breathe happy Febreze. La 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 la.
Hi, it's Tavis Smiley. KBLA Talk 1580 is inviting you to join us on Saturday, September 16th, 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. for our very first economic empowerment event for the community. This event is free and it's powered by Caltrans. We're doing this in association with Rambo House, and here's Rambo to tell you more.
Contracts. I'm going to say it again for all of us small business owners out there. Contracts. Rambo House, KBLA, Tavis, me. Oh my God, this is going to be massive. I truly thank Caltrans for giving us the opportunity to focus on contracts. Listen, that's what it's all about to be a small business in LA. That's how we hire our own. That's how we expand our community is contracts. KBLA1580.com is for you to have a seat at our contracts-focused event. Contract Ready does it again. We had over 900 last time. So you guys know how exciting this is. And if you just think that you want to get into contracts and you're close to it, bring your friends out for September 16th at the Marriott Hotel. Listen, you know where to register. KBLA1580.com. Come see me. I can't wait to see you. Let's do it, Tavis.
So be sure to go to KBLA1580.com for all the details. We'll see you Saturday, September 16th.
Sounds different, huh? This is Tavis Smiley.
This is Tavis Smiley in conversation with Philip Bump, a National Washington Post columnist. Philip, I mentioned a moment ago there are a number of things. Of course, I'm reading your stuff all the time in the Post. There are a number of things you've written about lately that I want to sort of probe. One of them, speaking of this rematch, as it were, between Joe Biden and Donald Trump in 2024, if, as we expect, all these things align the way they are appearing to align at the moment. So you got 2 old white guys running against each other. But it could be that young voters make the difference. 2 old white guys running, but young voters could, in fact, make the difference. And I saw a piece you wrote, pretty interestingly, about Generation X. Say a word about that, if you will, please.
Sure. So Generation X, of which I'm a member, we're not actually young anymore. We like to think we are. Someone called me middle-aged a few months ago, and it really shook my world.
That's funny.
But yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've done, and you and I have spoken about the book I wrote earlier this year, that really looks at the transition of power from the baby boom to younger Americans.
Mm-hmm.
You know, millennials themselves aren't even that young anymore. Right? The oldest millennials are now in their 40s. But it absolutely is the case that these younger generations, in part because they are more heavily Black and Hispanic in Asian than older generations, are more likely to vote Democratic. And so one of the questions that emerges around 2024, and this again goes back to what we were just talking about, is the extent to which they make up a larger part of the electorate. one of the big shifts from 2016 to 2020 was that the silent generation and older, people older than the baby boom, which actually, this is Joe Biden's generation, made up half as much of the electorate as they did in 2016, in 2020. And that by itself helps explain why Joe Biden lost. And so the question is, yes, Gen X, there was this sort of a speculation that maybe Gen X was the Trumpiest generation. It's not the case. The generations that are most loyal to Donald Trump's politics are the oldest generations, and those most hostile to his politics are the younger generations. And so the question really is, to what extent is 2024 shaped by younger Americans coming out to vote more heavily than they have in the past?
It's a powerful question, and I like the frame because the only old guy that I can think of right now who had any real success with that, he didn't win, but was Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders' campaign was fueled by the energy of young voters. Unless you see something I don't see that happening for Biden or Trump in the way that Bernie Sanders pulled that off.
No, you're exactly right. And part of that was that Sanders was able to speak very authentically to a left-wing politics that, it's just not what Joe Biden's about, right? Mm-hmm. Sanders is a democratic socialist. He is someone who has, for a long time embraced these left-wing politics. And that's never been who Joe Biden is. He's more moderate. And he was successful in part because he was more moderate, right? That's why he was able to win states that Sanders wasn't in the primaries in 2020. But yeah, you're right. I don't think young people are going to feel terribly excited about Trump or Biden as candidates, but I do think young people are going to come out and vote if they, to the extent that they recognize the presidential contest as a proxy for the things that they're worried about: abortion, climate change, gun control, things like that. And so I think part of what we're going to see, too, is left-wing organizations really trying to reinforce to people, look, this decision is not just about, which old white guy is going to be in the White House. It's about which person is going to be signing things like, prospective bans on abortion nationally or prospective restrictions on gun ownership nationally. Like, those are the questions that the left is going to try to make salient to young voters for 2024.
Speaking of our presidential candidates, the last major presidential candidate, as Philip Bump knows, to announce his run for the White House in the state of Mississippi was Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan had been governor of California, but chose to go all the way to Mississippi, specifically to Philadelphia, where Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney were murdered, to announce he was running for president. Now, why does a governor of California go to Mississippi to announce he's running for president? We know why. It was a shout to states. It was a nod to states' rights. In Mississippi this weekend, another guy, this one named Cornel West, his campaign takes flight in Mississippi. He chose to go there, as Reagan did years ago, to, again, give flight to his independent presidential campaign on the Green Party ticket. I'll ask Philip when we come forward how concerned President Biden should be about Cornel West, and for that matter, about Robert Kennedy Jr., who's kicking up some dust as well. We'll talk about that in our remaining moments with Philip Bump when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What does access mean?
Access means owning a home. Access means growing my business.
Access means building generational wealth. No matter your goals, U.S. Bank Access Commitment Programs and initiatives provide the tools and resources to help you reach them. Access your financial goals at usbank.com/access. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Hey, life doesn't stop when cancer starts. After diagnosis, treatment is vital. But for some, just getting there, to appointments, chemo, or radiation, is a major challenge. You can change that. Volunteer to give rides with the American Cancer Society Road to Recovery program. Driving for a few hours of your day can make a life-saving difference for someone with cancer. Visit cancer.org/drive to learn more.
I'm MC Light for Hip Hop Heritage, celebrating 50 years of hip hop, authentically powered by Cadillac. From its earliest days of show-stopping, DJs and MCs cold rocking parties, to its dominance on the music charts, hip-hop has been the biggest game changer in American music, and I mean ever. And it's not just about the music. It's how we celebrate, how we communicate, how we continue to elevate. Check out Cadillac and see how our swag has evolved and continues to revolve around the world.
For more on how Cadillac is celebrating hip-hop's 50th, visit Cadillac.com/audacity.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
The rent is too damn high. KBLA joins you in calling for affordable housing. The LA Tenants Union is a diverse, tenant-led movement fighting for the human right to housing for all. The LA Tenants Union demands safe, affordable housing and union rent control. They organize against landlord harassment, mass evictions, and displacement, and mobilize for the repeal of the Ellis Act and Costa-Hawkins Act. The LA Tenants Union is on a mission to strengthen tenants' political power through education, advocacy, and direct action. To get help with your eviction or other landlord-tenant issues, take action for justice, or become a member, visit latenantsunion.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally and commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, can potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
Philip Bump, I've known Cornel West for over 30 years, and he has a huge following amongst young people. He, of course, is taught at some of the nation's preeminent universities. He is lectured at colleges I've never heard of in this country. He's always invited on college campuses to speak as this sort of rock star academic. I'm wondering whether or not this challenge from the progressive left by Cornel West should worry the White House. I'm wondering whether or not Robert Kennedy Jr., who is kicking up some dust running against Biden inside the Democratic Party, should concern the administration. It's one thing to be planning for a fight against Donald Trump. It's another thing to ignore those persons who are challenging you on your own side of the aisle.
Yeah, no, I would say there are probably three things of varying degrees of concern that might emerge over the course of the next 12 months. The first is Robert Kennedy. I don't think the White House is terribly concerned about him. He's not really getting any traction in the polls. Most of the gains he's achieved in terms of people viewing him positively come from Republicans. That's who's actually looking at his candidacy and approving of it. I don't think he's going to make much of a splash in the primaries. Cornel West is interesting, and I think his candidacy depends a lot on the resources that he has available. We've certainly seen in the past times when third-party candidates akin to West have gotten some traction in the polls. You know, obviously the 2000 race was close enough that votes for Ralph Nader in Florida made the difference in that pivotal state for George W. Bush over Al Gore. You know, it certainly is possible that a number of third-party candidates, West included, could siphon away enough votes from Joe Biden to actually impact the election. It's hard to say. It's hard to say, you know, especially this far out in terms of polling. Then there's this question of no labels, which is this organization which has some sort of sketchy ties to Republican actors, which has talked about putting forward a robustly funded third-party candidate if it's Biden versus Trump next year, because they see those as two unappealing options. Polling suggests that would do more damage to Biden, and they may put a lot of resources into it. They may, you know, this is an organization that has money and has an infrastructure that they can tap into, probably more so in many regards than the Green Party, although the Green Party has ballot access. So I think those are three things that Biden is going to be concerned about, and I think those are three things that probably Trump doesn't need to worry about as much because they're probably less likely to affect him.
Yep. I should mention very quickly that Cornel West will be a guest on this program on Monday. Monday, as I mentioned, is the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. We got an amazing show lined up for you next Monday, but one of those hours will be a conversation with Cornel West, fresh off his campaign taking flight in Mississippi this weekend. He'll join us next Monday on this program for a full hour. For now, though, we thank Philip Bump, National Washington Post columnist, for joining us once again to talk politics with us. And we're in that season, so we will see what happens in the next 48 hours with this Republican debate tomorrow night, with Donald Trump talking to Tucker Carlson, Donald Trump turning himself in Fulton County on Thursday. Going to be a fascinating next 48 hours, politically speaking. Philip Bump, I know you'll be busy. We'll be busy here. We'll talk again soon, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
All the best to you. Hour 2 of Tavis, Smiley, when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Former President Trump says he'll travel to Atlanta Thursday to surrender in his Georgia election interference case. He noted on Truth Social that he'll be arrested by Fani Willis, who he referred to as a radical left district attorney. The African-American Fulton County DA who launched the investigation into Trump and his allies